if you're truly trying to innovate the industrial manufacturing sector just for the sake of efficiency, which is worth a lot of time and money, and I think we have to, at some point, some of these moated industries are going to have to get off their duffs and adopt some change management despite the liabilities, and understand that they can change, without sacrificing first principles that then would violate, their first principles of providing the perfect part of the opportunity.
Most supply chain conversations talk about systems, margins, and speed. This one starts somewhere else. It starts with family business pressure, trust earned the hard way, and what happens when you try to change how work gets done without losing the people who do it. Andrew Johnson has spent his career inside manufacturing, and today's conversation is about decisions that show up on the floor and what culture looks like when efficiency and pride collide. Hello, and welcome back to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. My name is Jim Mayer, and I'm your host for your journey today. Before we get started, if you like this show, please check out our other shows, Work But Make It Human, Industrial Storytellers, and the Manufacturing Connector. And make sure you leave a review and rate the show wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch it if you're on YouTube. Our guest today is Andrew Johnson. Andrew grew up, like I said, inside manufacturing, not conceptually, but as a place, as a home, in a family business with real customers and real consequences when something breaks or goes sideways. Over time, he's found himself sitting at the intersection of operations, supply chain, and leadership decisions that ripple through the entire organization. What I want to talk with Andrew about is not the technology or headlines or gross stats. It's what happens to people when systems change, how leaders earn trust when they introduce new ways of working, where efficiency helps and where it quietly hurts if you're not paying attention. This is going to be a conversation about choices, pressure, and the culture that forms, whether you design it intentionally or not. Andrew Johnson, welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. We've had this one. Well, I'm not even going to get into the mess that was my scheduling that led us here today. But thank you for being here, Andrew. You've been a very patient guest. So really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem at all. I'm excited for it too. It's kind of cathartic to go back over some of your career moves, lots of failures, lots of messes in my past, that brought me to where I'm at today. So I really enjoy these conversations.
Awesome. Andrew, first question I ask all my guests is a icebreaker. And that icebreaker is, if your life were a movie, what would the genre be? Who plays you? And what's the opening scene?
Oh my gosh. That's a really hard question. Shooting from the hip here, no pun intended, I would like to think it would be a Western.
Okay.
It'd be great if Clint Eastwood played me, maybe.
Okay.
I'd settle for John Wayne as well. Those would be fantastic villains. Opening scene, man, probably, new kid kind of on the streets walking into the dusty town. Everybody's wondering who the heck this kid is. No reputation, just a lot of mystery and people thinking not much of me. That would be my opening scene, and then of course I'd have to have some big bang.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I like that. And I asked this question because it gives the guest the opportunity to share unconsciously with me and with the audience exactly how they see themselves. So the genre is how you've seen your life to date, right? The who plays you is how you see yourself in your own story. And then that opening scene, all good movies start in media res, right? That midpoint of the story. And so it gives us an idea of what your midpoint in your own view is of your life here. So I love that answer. You are officially the first person to say a Western to that question. So as somebody who loves a good Western, I appreciate that immensely. So thank you very much, Andrew. Great answer. Next question is also very standard, but This is one that is a little bit deeper than the last one. And that is, what does culture mean to you? This is a manufacturing culture podcast. We have to talk about culture specifically at some point, but not necessarily the dictionary definition of the word. What does it mean to you?
Culture to me in a work context is it's all about authenticity. Leaders of the organization being authentic with the employees, not just about themselves, but what they want to do with the company, where they want to take the organization, what hills they want to climb and what struggles they're dealing with. It's all about authenticity. And if you don't, and frankly, this whole conversation is one I wish I would have had. If you go back in time, I wish I would have had this conversation as a much younger man when I started my career, because I did not have an appreciation for all of these facts about culture and how it impacts organizations. I was very much, naive in a lot of those ways, and have a lot of failures in my past in and around this topic of culture and being communicative and authentic with all your employees and organizations. So, yeah, that's what it would mean to me. It's what we've come to realize, and it's a very important part of who we are and where we're going, is to have everybody that's inside our organization, on board with our culture. And wearing our culture on our sleeve now, I think, is even more important in the societal context, because folks seem to be getting easily offended. So a defense mechanism is to just let everybody know inside and out, what your organization is and what it's about, so you don't, attract folks and then they feel like they got duped and are now offended by the culture that you are affronting them with. So we just wear it on our sleeve now.
Good for you. Good for you. That was maybe one of the more introspective answers that I've gotten to this question. And for me, what are there moments in your past that jump out as this moment I didn't appreciate what I now know? I mean, can you share a story or a moment in time that you can think of that reflects that answer you just gave, of not necessarily appreciating that due to naivety as a younger person?
Well, yeah, I have so many stories, unfortunately. And I do live out the whole authenticity thing. I'm a very authentic person. I've recorded a lot of podcasts with folks, and if people just listen to everything I put out there, they're going to know me inside and out. Like, I bear it all. I air a lot of dirty laundry, because I think it's important for everybody to learn from their mistakes, and I want to be authentic to those around me, so they know who I am and what I've made up of. A lot of what has made me is my failures. We learn a lot from failing, and I'm certainly not afraid to fail. But that attitude early in my career got me into a lot of trouble, you could say. My career started with my father, really. In 1982, before I was born, he started an industrial distribution company that serves at the behest of U.S. manufacturers. And that company sells O-rings and seals and gaskets. It's going on 40 plus years of business now. And it's really the center of my life. It's what of the planet that pulls me back with its gravity anytime I get too far away, is the O-ring world. And it's still very much a part of my life. I own it. I own part of it and help run it with now my 3 brother-in-laws. It's a very interesting family business story. We can unpack that if you want. But
absolutely,
the genesis of me stepping into a career was like 08, 09. And if you have been in the manufacturing industrial space for that long, if you can remember, 08, 09 was a very turbulent year. We had an economic hiccup that caused a lot of manufacturers to basically pause and put their supply chains on hold. And then we had the classic bullwhip effect in 09, where nobody could get anything. And supply chains were strung out for like 18, 20, 30, 40 weeks on engineered product. And it was a bit of a nightmare. And so I came right out of college, bachelor's in accounting, anxious to work with my dad, for my dad, in this industrial distribution company, which at the time was probably about 20 folks. We had customers all over the U.S., and I was chomping at the bit to help and in some ways, take over the reins and innovate and make the company better. And then I got smacked in the face with, pretty terrible economic conditions. So I somewhat felt like a bad omen, like, hey, here I am. And then the whole thing goes to hell in a handbasket. Post 08, 09, we dug ourselves out of that. And we're back on track. And my early failures of culture were I was oddly paired with my two brother-in-laws. So I have three sisters, no brothers. My sisters all married fairly entrepreneurial guys. And these guys wound up through a series of weird events. They weren't really recruited necessarily. They wound up working at the family business with me. And once we got our feet under us and we felt fairly confident that we knew the business, we knew where it needed to go, it was somewhat antiquated and we felt we needed to innovate it. So we set up a big, lofty goal. It was the goal was really thrust upon us because we had to adopt a new ERP system, enterprise resource planning, big piece of software that runs our whole company. And so we took on this giant project, my brother-in-laws and I, two of them at the time. So there's three of us, kind of the three amigos. And it was still very much my dad's company. He's still very much running it in their daily. And we started to really come up with some big plans and innovate incrementally inside the company. We did I personally, and my brothers didn't do a very good job either, did a very poor job of communicating to the 20 or so employees that my dad had done a wonderful job of keeping and maintaining these folks for a long time. Tenured employees, knew a lot about our company, were fantastic employees, and just basically got, to keep with the Western theme, we took off in a chuck wagon across the prairie of innovation to unknown destinations. Didn't tell anybody in the wagon and started losing employees, passengers in the wagon, just dropping them out the back. The wagon just rolled on down the dusty trail without them. And I see that it's a lot of different stories, but a series of unfortunate events where we left a bunch of valuable people in the dust. And it was unfortunate because it impacted our culture for a while. And we basically set us back because we had to find new talent and then train them on the idiosyncrasies of the O-ring industry, which are very nuanced. I just didn't appreciate it. I did a terrible job of communicating our plans, our visions, and our incremental way to get there, and keeping some people on board we should have kept. And that set us back. That's just one of many, many, many failures in and around kind of an unsophisticated, I'm the hammer and everything's a nail approach to innovation. I will say we got it done. We innovated the O-ring sales and services, probably one of the most innovative, cutting edge, technically adept industrial B2B distributors in the marketplace today. We've come a long, long ways, and that was the start of it. It was just a bit of a bloody start, messy start. And we learned a lot along the way by making a lot of mistakes. So we got there.
Well, I'm a massive believer in failure happens, right? And I think that this industry is less forgiving of failure than some others. I think that sometimes in a machine shop setting, you make a mistake. That could be tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scrap. And we tend to be less forgiving and less understanding that failure is a thing when the stakes are higher, right? But I love that you now are able to look back and say, this was a failure. This is what we learned. This is how we grew beyond that. What was the process like to rebuild the culture intentionally once you realized that you had made this mistake, this failure?
Yeah, it was slow. Once you tear all that stuff down, putting it back together, it took some time. It took us realizing, we are only as good as the people we surround ourselves with. So we had to go out and find new talent and then have some patience on training them and bringing them on board. And I would say it's always a work in progress. I mean, we're still working on that today, but it was a lot of that. And it was also a little bit of fate. Fate brought us, my last brother-in-law, my youngest sister married a guy by the name of Evan. That, bringing him on board, he had an engineering background, by far the most qualified of any of us to work in the space. Bringing him on board was also kind of fateful. It was nice. It was a good addition to me and my other two brother-in-laws. Really rounded us out. So I'd say the four of us are very, very different. We're very complementary of each other, and that's very fateful, lucky, blessed. I mean, in whatever perspective you want to put that dynamic, we came out on the other side of that pretty well off from a management ownership through, very well rounded. So that was just kind of I lucked out on that part. So that helped us round out our management team, and then we since applied a lot of those dynamics and surrounding ourselves with talented people, keeping them, retaining them, treating them with respect by communicating with them where we want to go. Since then, we've done a better job too of like onboarding our suppliers, because as a distributor, you're really only as good as the people you employ and the partnerships you make external. So we have great relationships with our suppliers and very, very strong value add relationships with our consumers. And that's helped us build kind of this O-ring fiefdom in the Midwest.
I love it. Let's back up a little bit even further. What did you learn growing up in the family business, looking at the way your dad ran the company, that still shapes who you are and how you lead today?
Yeah, my dad's biggest impacts were the basics. He's so good at the basics. People say don't major on the minors, but in entrepreneurialism, you really have to do the basics every day. It's what people call the grind. That is the grind, is showing up, working some long hours at times, really, really long hours, grinding it out. As a middleman, we often get stuck kind of between the rock and a hard place. My dad taught me, grind it out, never burn a bridge. You'll need that bridge later. So don't cut off customers, don't cut off suppliers. Or some bad interaction, just come back the next day, put in another day of hard work. My dad still is hardworking. That was probably the biggest contribution that he made to the next generation, was just showing us what hard work looks like, what persistence looks like, what the grind looks like, and teaching us that we have to continue that. Often, I think probably the one thing that doesn't get continued in generational businesses is the generation, the preceding generation, whatever that is, 1, 2, or 3, does the grind really, really well, builds an empire, and they tend to, I think statistically, they hand it to the next generation who hasn't learned that lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of that whole golden spoon attitude. And then the next generation really does a poor job of continuing the grind. So, not here. My dad's, my brother-in-law show up. We're in the trenches. They work really, really hard. And we're always working. We'll be working on Christmas Day because we get a lot of flack from the wives for this, but we'll break off and they'll find us in the corner talking about business constantly.
Well, and we'll get into that, but you're more than just O-rings now at this point, and we'll dive into a little bit deeper of the systems you've built and all of that here in a moment. But family is not something that everybody loves, right? And family is not always as warm of a word as people who are blessed and privileged to have good family life, think that it can be. When working for your father, when bringing in your brother-in-laws, has it made this a messy dynamic at all at times, or has it been fairly smooth sailing?
It has been as smooth as it could be. It's smoother than probably 90 of any other family business dynamic out there. I'd say we are in rarefied air, in all honesty. When I say as smooth as it could be, for as blessed as we are, there's always going to be these moments in time, especially when you're trying to continue to build the company and do new things, take new ground, expand it. There's going to be stressful times that test the limits of your family bonds. My brother-in-laws, not being their biological father, it's their father-in-law. A lot of the very, very stressful moments tend to fall on me to handle the stress between. I'm kind of like the go-between between my brother-in-laws and my dad in many ways. And so when things get stressful in the last decade, it's been me that's had to go to my dad, because they do know that at the end of the day, Monday through Friday, we're family 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, we're working together. My dad, still very much his company. He's done a great job of succession planning, past in many, many ways. So there is still that stress in that dynamic. All of us, I think, my dad included, at this point, understand that the family dynamic is safe for us. It's the most important. So we're not willing to risk that dynamic for upside, for growth, for a new venture or customer, or the opportunity of expanding the company. We won't sacrifice our family dynamic And it's so great. Our wives all get along. We have a ton of kids. I think the central theme amongst me and my sisters and my brother-in-laws and my mom and dad and all the kids is, and this is going to sound like really snarky, but we are entering the Christmas season. We have a shared religious underpinning that is unique amongst the families. We all go to different churches, different denominations. We have different communities, probably slightly different beliefs in some ways, or at least ways we practice our faith. But at the end of the day, we all have a shared faith in Christianity, and it's that underpinning, I think, that gives us a backstop for all of our entrepreneurial capitalistic tendencies to fall back on when they fail us, because they will eventually. Human nature of things will get the better of us, and in a moment we'll say things we regret or do things we shouldn't, and then
Right.
we have to make amends. But our biblical underpinning, my brother-in-laws are fantastic men, character, and my dad, we can keep our priorities straight, we can forgive each other, and we can move on. So that's hopefully how we continue to have probably the best family dynamic in the industry, is continuing to focus on that.
That's awesome. And you talked about expansion, and I alluded to, we were going to talk about, some of the transitions that you guys have made. If for anybody watching, you can see the branding below or behind you for ShelfAware, which is slightly different than O-rings, but that's not the only thing that you guys have going on. Walk us through this evolution from O-rings to the multiple legs of the stool that you all now have.
Sure. It's wildly simple, actually. The scale of our O-ring empire comes down to just like the simplest of human natures. Myself and my three brother-in-laws were, actually just two of us when we came up with the plan. So two brother-in-laws and myself, before we added Evan to the mix. We were already thinking of succession with my dad, and we were working in the company, but we knew that if we wanted to make any sort of like decent money, we had to grow the pie, because now there was a bunch of people trying to take slices of a fairly small pie. And so that's the simplistic human nature of it. Was we were like, well, we got to grow this place because we want a bigger slice of pie. So our original kind of plan based around that ERP adoption was kind of our jumping off point. We called it I think I coined the term, but it's not great. At the time, man, there was a politician that was running around the national political scene with some like 10-10-10 plan or something. We came up with a plan called the 15-15-15 plan. And we wanted to grow my dad's company, our company, 15 million. And we wanted to do it with 15 people inside 15,000 square feet. So as a distributor of physical industrial products, it was a great plan, because it was not just about top line revenue growth, it was about efficiency. How can we grow to 15 million efficiently? And the efficiency part came in with space and people. So those are our two big resources: warehouse space and number of individuals in our organization. So we set off with that big goal in mind, and the way we executed was incremental innovation. So we started tackling internal innovation inside of departments. I think we set our sights on the warehouse first, receiving, QC, shipping, and started innovating, doing simple things like, hey, looking at this row of file cabinets, can we get rid of these filing cabinets? So, that opened up kind of a Pandora's box of filing cabinets, and we had to innovate in a lot of different processes and systems and ways we did things to get rid of all the paper. But that was just an example of the incremental innovation. Let's take it away. Let's launch this down avenues on how to accomplish that. It was the internal innovation strategy that eventually led us to this external innovation. I would say that's a good piece of advice, is if you want to do something in the marketplace externally, the best place to practice before you just go out and fall on your face in the market is internally. And we were very well practiced on internal innovation strategy and adopting the technology and applying that to internal systems before we tackled ShelfAware, which was our first kind of foray into external innovation, creating value in the marketplace that we could sell upon and drive value in our customer base. It was as simple as the customer asked for additional service. We had several accounts at the time. This would have been 2015, 2014, somewhere in there, who were asking for additional service levels. They wanted us to not only, these were manufacturing consumers, they wanted us to not only sell them the O-rings to go on the pumps and the motors and the gearboxes and the hydraulic cylinders, they wanted us to manage the inventory on site for them. So the industry calls it vendor managed inventory. We really didn't want to do it because if you're only trying to employ 15 people, if you have a goal of not employing a ton of people, then you don't want a bunch of external sales reps driving around Godstream or, manually stocking inventory at your customers' facilities. And when you live in the Midwest, you understand real quick that like a customer can be hundreds of miles from your facility and hundreds of miles from the next customer. So like sending physical sales reps out to manage inventory on site was like really not feasible. So we applied our internal innovation methodology, really use of technology and writing of software and developing a hardware platform. Applied that to that problem to come up with a graceful solution that was centered around technology to create ShelfAware as a digital inventory management platform designed by industrial distributors for industrial manufacturing consumers to manage component level inventory. Like the gearbox manufacturers, a good example is actually our first implementation was a gearbox manufacturer. We put the ShelfAware system totally home brewed. I mean, bubblegum and duct tape was the prototype version. Deployed it at a longtime customer and literally told their management team, like, hey, if this system like catches on fire, we promise we'll put out the fire and we'll send as many people as it takes to rectify the inventory situation. And they trusted us with this like half-baked solution and worked out great. So we deployed it at our first customer, the gearbox manufacturer. They came back to us like 3 months later. Of course, we had this presentation ready to wow them with. And then they were somewhat wowed, but then, they asked us some really interesting follow-up questions like, hey, now that you've more or less automated our inbound component supply chain for O-rings and seals and gaskets, can you apply the same supply chain automation technology to another product vertical? Because we don't want to have to manage our fasteners and our bearings and our hose and our fittings. And so that was a great question. And then, of course, we had to noodle on how the heck we're going to do that. Of course, my dad, being old school, he was like, oh, sure, we'll sell anything. We're a distributor. Like, I don't really want to have to figure out hose and fittings. And so we ended up going down the licensing route. So we had to invest a lot more time and energy into the software and hardware so that we could license it to other industrial suppliers. And that's what created the ShelfAware platform. The idea that any industrial B2B supplier can hop on our platform, provide the same digital inventory management solution to the same consumer or to their own consumer base. And that was the launch of ShelfAware as an inventory platform in 2018. We licensed the system to a host of folks. My family business O-Ring is about to install their 8th ShelfAware installation at I can't disclose the location because every time we install it at somebody that we don't currently do business with, somebody on the other end, our competitor, is going to lose out on a massive customer.
Right.
So we've done that a number of times. I think there's probably some industrial distributors in the O-Ring and seal marketplace, especially some salespeople that probably hate me for creating ShelfAware because it's move the cheese a couple times for some folks. But it was that service level was a big part of our growth, helped us get to that 15 plan. So it's quite the accomplishment. Set a goal out. It only took us a little more than a decade to get there, but we got there.
And so ShelfAware itself creates a lot of change management needs, not only internally for you guys, but in the customers that use that. What have you learned about change management and resistance to change with employees through ShelfAware product line?
Man, boy, School of Hard Knocks. I'll go back to something you said earlier in the podcast. You mentioned that you don't believe the manufacturing industrial marketplace is very forgiving. I agree with you. It's these industrial specifications. I mean, we all are part of making components that keep people in the air, that run power plants, that feed people without poisoning them. So it's important tasks. And yeah, if you put the wrong O-ring in something like a space shuttle, it can go really bad. Machine a part wrong and then try and put it in a car. Yeah, you're going to have hundreds of millions, maybe tens of millions in recalls. It's very bad. But on the other hand, what I've learned is there are segments of our industry that are so heavily regulated out of necessity, because we don't want to kill people or poison them or maim them, that it has created some of our industry segments have like a lot of moats built around them that cause the suppliers to said heavily regulated industries, like one that comes top of mind, aerospace. I don't want them to unregulate aerospace. But what it does do is the suppliers that made it in on those original specifications, as long as they make the parts correctly, it is very difficult to dethrone them with any sort of value add, because the whole industry is going to look at that change and see it as a liability. It's an opportunity for things that have been working for 10 years. We haven't dropped airplanes out of the sky, so why change it? But if you're truly trying to innovate the industrial manufacturing sector just for the sake of efficiency, which is worth a lot of time and money, and I think we have to, at some point, some of these moated industries are going to have to get off their duffs and adopt some change management despite the liabilities, and understand that they can change without sacrificing first principles that then would violate their first principles of providing the perfect part of the opportunity. There's not really a perfect part, but a near perfect item for the application, consistent. So that's been one of my biggest struggles, is we're walking around the industry with one of the most efficiency, instant ROI things out there, and we have all kinds of folks screaming for supply chain innovation, yet I offer this gift of supply chain innovation to specific industries, and the amount of pushback I get from people that have been doing the same things for 30 years successfully is immeasurable, and we're never going to get anything done in some of those moated sectors until the sector itself is forced to change. I don't know what that might be. So we'll see where it goes, but that's been my experience so far. You have like the greatest thing ever, and people are like, yeah, but we're going to keep pushing the paper because we keep airplanes in the air.
Yeah. Well, I've come to learn that people actually love change, but they love change that they are involved in creating. When it's something tangible, when it's something real. If people didn't like change, we wouldn't have the fashion industry. You and I would be dressed exactly the same. If people didn't like change, there would be no tourism or travel industry, because people would just stay put. There would be no restaurants because everybody would eat the same food. What those things all have in common is individuals are able to decide what change matters to them, right? And I think that as we look at the industrial space, and I've taught workshops on this, when we look at digital transformation and digital change, the reason a lot of these systems that companies buy sit underutilized, or the hardware sits like $100,000 paperweight in a corner of a shop somewhere, isn't because people hate change. It's because they don't see the value in the change that those are creating. The people who are doing the work. So often we see owners go to IMTS or FabTech or MD&M West or name your trade show, and they see these bright, shiny objects and say, oh man, that's going to change the way I do business. That's going to solve the problems that I see we have. But those people who are doing the work on the shop floor may not see how that bright, shiny object's going to do it. So they have to do a better job as owners, as leaders, to go into those shops and say, hey, here's a problem that I see us having. It's X, it's Y, it's Z, whatever. How do we fix this? And get that input from those people, because likely it's going to be a solution that you can implement, right? In your case, and as somebody who came from distribution myself, the people who rely on managed inventory solutions love them, and the end users know the value. I think that your challenge is the leadership, middle management aren't seeing how your solution solves their problem on the surface, right? But the people on the floor, if they were to be asked, they'd be like, oh yeah, I need a managed inventory solution so I don't run out of X, Y, or Z. That's my bottleneck, right? Do you think there's any validity to that statement?
Yeah, definitely. ShelfAware's business model's part of my problem. In a lot of ways, it's an advantage, but in some ways, it's a disadvantage. This would be in a lot of ways a disadvantage. We're licensing the system to industrial product distributors, and what I've run into is a lot of those industrial product distributors, great people, but their sales staff and marketing folks and business development folks have been adeptly trained at selling products, not necessarily services. So now we're approaching it in this new paradigm of a value-added service sale, and they lack the vernacular to impart that vision on their customers. They have to impart the vision of a win-win-win, and then find the internal champion at the consumer who can also impart that vision. There's a lot of imparting of visions that has to happen for this to work. The disadvantage is the licensing in some ways, because it's hard for us as ShelfAware to control that messaging and how the vision is imparted. We're working hard to create additional resources that we haven't had previously that will help equip it and inspire the industrial distributor to basically train their sales associates on the ideas of value-added service selling. And I've learned a lot by keeping a close eye on the industrial distributors that sell value. The one that always comes top of mind for me in this space is Fastenal. I've learned a lot watching Fastenal and studying Granger and MFC, trying to see how they sell the value so adeptly. They have a lot more control, because they're the ones implementing all the programs, but they're also selling licensed features. It certainly resonates with me. It's one of the issues. I do think it'll naturally sell itself once our industry embarks on this journey. I think we're about to embark on, which is a renaissance of American manufacturing. I think we're on the rest of that. We're either going to have to invest in U.S. manufacturing in a big way for the next generation, or we're going to struggle to maintain our global leadership position for a lot of reasons in these very futures. I'm optimistic that we're headed in the right direction from a U.S. manufacturing base. The external pressure, investment in dollars and resources that we haven't seen in decades will help spur the vision and the visionaries that will be injected into our industry to hopefully move us forward so we can be global and to stay number one, which is a hard place to stay for very long.
Yeah.
All reports, it's hard to be number one. I'm in Kansas City. Kansas City Chiefs. We have to relinquish that this year. It did not go well for us. So, it's a tough place to be.
Go Broncos.
I am optimistic that the external factors will help drive innovation.
Andrew, you've now moved into another new phase of your entrepreneurial journey with your brother-in-laws and have another project that you're working on, Heavy Tech. Walk us through that evolution and where you are now with that.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't think I'd ever be here, which is on the other side of the coin. So I've lived up to this point, entire life on the supply side of the manufacturing sector. Been in a lot of manufacturing facilities, and I'm there to support them, whether that's with O-Ring, ShelfAware, or with one of ShelfAware's licensees at this point. We have a bunch, and so I'm in factories all the time. Supply side, always fascinated, learned a lot, and then I got a rare opportunity in my career that was really just born out of, I think, a lot of innovation, a lot of entrepreneurialism is the right place. I was in the right place, fluid power industry, at the right time to meet some of my co-founders of Heavy Tech, and these are guys who are wired a lot like me, innovators, not afraid of change, not afraid of being that hammer that's hitting the nail and facing some of that blowback. And these guys, my co-founders, there's 5 of us, we're all in the fluid power industry for the most part, saw the need for change and innovation, knew that the big OEMs like Caterpillar and Kubota and John Deere, they held all the market share. It's unlikely that they were going to adopt some of this new technology that was kind of cutting edge and do what we perceived as the right thing. And so basically, through a lot of casual conversations at the bar at some of the trade associations we're all part of, we conceived this idea of, hey, if we can't get the industry to adopt some of these components that we had invented that would revolutionize the fluid power industry, then we'll just, at some point, get fed up enough and start our own manufacturing firm. Well, it sounded great at the bar, probably because we were a few drinks in, to start a manufacturing company. But gosh, you would not believe the agape mouths, shocked expressions we ran into when we went back to industry friends and family. My brother-in-law is included because this venture with Heavy Tech is apart from them. They're not They're not involved in it in any way. And they were some of the biggest shocked folks when I said, "Hey, look, me and my buddies, we're going to start a manufacturing company." Everybody. I haven't met anybody that's like, "Oh, great idea." Everybody is like, "You can't do that." Like that's by large every feedback I've gotten so far is like, "That's possible. You can't start a manufacturing company in the U.S." And it does seem like long odds because, frankly, there hasn't been any manufacturing companies really started. All the ones I've worked with have been around a long time. I've changed hands a lot. And a lot of my customers that my dad used to have great one-on-one relationships with independent manufacturing business owners are now owned by private equity. So there is not a lot of organically started, grown, and still privately held manufacturing firms in America. So the fact that we're starting one does seem somewhat outlandish, but here we are. Started Heavy Tech about a year ago in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Me, 5 other co-founders, all of us with real boots on the ground, practitioner level experience. We've been in the trenches, and it wasn't like some, ill-conceived, spur-of-the-moment decision. We've been scheming on this idea of electrified, off-highway, hydraulic construction equipment for the better part of half a decade. Convinced that the industry should adopt, and knowing that they would, we just started it ourselves. So it's, I guess to put it succinctly, we've created a manufacturing company that is going to produce the most efficient, safest, and most fun to operate construction equipment on the planet. And it's going to be diesel, electric, hybrid. Hydraulics will be the heart and soul of it. That's the only way you can move big, heavy things is with hydraulics. And we think we are way out in front on it because, like I said, we've been quietly designing and producing the subcomponents for half a decade. So it's not like we're basically, we already had all the CAD packages done for the most part before we even started the company. We had all the ideas, the plans laid, and we're turning the wrenches. It's kind of, the more I talk about it, it sounds so insane. We're literally building the first prototype. It's a compact track loader. We had 3 designs, and we had CAD'd up. We had a mini excavator, a articulated loader, and a compact track loader. And we started with a CTL because we think it's kind of it's the most fun. Everybody loves to rent CTLs. If you've ever used a compact track loader, I mean, if you haven't, that's what you need to do over the holiday break is rent a compact track loader and go out to a farm and just run some trees over with it and dig a hole and move some dirt. It is a blast. And so we said, we got to start with that piece of equipment. So we did the CTL, and we're literally turning wrenches. And one of my brothers, Mike, who lives in Fort Wayne, he's the main wrench turner. He's got a bunch of kids. So we do believe in child labor. So the kids are actually turning some wrenches. We have children assembling our prototype, and we're not ashamed of it. And they're having fun doing it in a safe environment. I will add that. And we are living out our story online. Heavy Tech is all over LinkedIn is our primary kind of social media platform that we're using to tell our story. And because we're a bunch of practitioners, guys that have bootstrapped companies previously, we said we're going to do all this without private equity, any venture capital money. So far, we've raised all of our money through a crowdfunding round, which also sounds insane. But we went out to a bunch of farmers and ranchers and business owners and guys in the industrial space, former executives and former managers and just plumbers and electricians and contractors, and said, hey world, we're going to build this cutting edge equipment. It's going to be way better for all these different reasons, and you want to invest. So we have hundreds of people that have invested in our company to put us over about nearing $350,000 in a crowdfunding round. Money is going 100% of it to build and design our first prototype. It'll be done in January. Diesel electric hybrid, much more fuel efficient, total cost of ownership is drastically reduced. There's a lot fewer parts. And I guess for the layman, the easiest way to say it is we're trying to position ourselves because we're huge fanboys of Tesla, SpaceX. We're trying to position ourselves in the off-highway space as that type of innovator. Just clean sheet. What does a compact track loader in 2026 look like?
Got it.
Wipe the slate completely clean. Delete all your preconceptions. Think about what the operators of today want. If you drove to the construction site in a Tesla and then you get in some crusty old, dirty, loud, noisy, inefficient compact truck loader. That's not very much fun. You want to get out of your
Yeah.
Tesla and get into something equally innovative. So that's what we're building. I think I would ever, I did not plan this. I did not think I would be on the other side of that manufacturing coin, but it is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun because I've suffered on the supply side for decades. And so now I'm in the driver's seat, the consumer side, and it's been a pretty wild experience. High hopes for 2026. We're hoping to make another 3 prototypes. We're in an industry, and I'll hand it back to you after this, but we're in an industry, and you'll appreciate this, that is very tactile. It's like, I'll believe it when I get to operate it, is what everybody's saying. So we know prototype has to come first. So when we get this thing made next year, you're going to see us all over America in this prototype compact diesel electric hybrid track loader. And we're going to give people the opportunity to tug on the joysticks and see this thing go to work and basically put our money where our mouth is and prove it. So
I want to ride. I want to drive one. I want to operate one when you get something operational, and then let me know how much insurance I need to have just in case I fuck it up. Yeah. I want to be in that list of demo drivers on that thing. If we can make that happen.
We'd love to make that happen. We have some plans to create a little bit of a sandbox scenario at one of these aforementioned trade shows. Would be our preference. We'd love to put this together at an in-person event where people can get in and operate this thing.
That would be awesome. I love it. You alluded to the renaissance that you see coming in American manufacturing, and my research, my studies, my opinion, I guess is the best way to put that, is we created a lot of the mess that we're in today ourselves, right? As far as labor shortages, as far as capacity issues, and a lot of that stems from governmental policy that was enacted back in the 70s in Nixon era, right? But then also part of it was looking at people as line items on balance sheets and not as people. And as such, we offshored a lot of our work. How do we undo 40 to 50 years of bad policy and bad corporate decision making to have this renaissance and to regrow American manufacturing, in your opinion?
Yeah, that is a great question. Very complex answer. I'll preface it with it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a generational change, and there's a lot of things that have to happen simultaneously. In a lot of ways, I feel like the U.S. economy is an airplane, and it's been descending rather dramatically, losing altitude for a decade now. And if we don't rebuild aspects of this plane and pull up on the rudder, it's going to possibly have a fiery crash. And I don't want to see that happen. But the idea of rebuilding a plane while you're in flight and then pulling up on the rudder is a scary experience. Anticipate in the next couple of years to be somewhat scared at times as we pull up on the rudder and probably take a wrench to the wings and replace the engines, and we're going to have to do some work on the rudder. All this stuff's happening while we're descending. I guess it's outside chance we do wind up in a fireball. But I love exciting rides, so I'm in for it. Part of the rebuilding we have to do, it's just a multifaceted. I'm going to start educationally. We have to tell young people that they're better off in the trades. They can make money instantly. They can start investing in retirement instantly. They can have job stability and a culture they enjoy, fulfillment at work, and we have to disconnect this idea that you have to go into the arts to have a fulfilled life. And so we got to completely change that. That's not going to be easy. We have to continue to push on regulations and really easing up on some of our regulations. We've outsourced a lot of our dirty, messy, nasty jobs overseas, out of convenience. Some of those are going to have to come back quickly, and some of them won't. I mean, I think that's from my perspective, which is always O-ring centric. I don't think O-rings are coming back to the U.S. someday. My own industry, it's going to stay in Southeast Asia. We outsourced that expertise a long time ago. They're teeny tiny little parts that have a ton of engineering dumped into them. They're extremely precise, and even though they cost fractions of pennies, and so I don't really see certain engineered components coming back to the U.S. in short order, or maybe ever in this Renaissance periods. I just see a lot of this, what I would call, engineered assembly, must come back to America. in a lot of different industry sectors for a variety of reasons. So it's not going to be necessarily pretty. And then I think at the heart of all of it, kind of the umbrella overarching the entire industry, has to be innovation. If this country does not bring back innovative ways to manufacture, innovative products to manufacture, we're doomed. And we can't just make stuff for the sake of making it. We have to make it because it's better, stronger, safer, more productive, more efficient, better connectivity, better culture. All that stuff has to be first principles, how we operate, and how we go to market, and what we ask investors to invest in. It just has to be better product. We can't do that. We can't bring back the same things we've been making overseas and just bring them back and make them here and expect it all to be better. What we bring back has to be better designs. And so I think we have advantages there because we do have a lot of talented engineers in this country and a lot of innovative ideas. And you can see it kind of play out with, I referenced SpaceX earlier, but they're a great company here in America to look at that's doing things. One of my favorite, we were talking about this at Heavy Tech, we have to demonstrate this visually a lot of time. And one of my favorite visual representations of innovation in the physical manufacturing space is the SpaceX Falcon rocket boosters. They have these incredible photos. You can find them anywhere, Google them, floating around online, where you can see like their Gen 1 engine going Gen 2, Gen 3, and the thing, like, by the time you get to Gen 3, it looks like it's missing a lot of parts. You're like, oh, wait, is that even the same rocket engine? Like, is that going to go to the moon? So that's the type of manufacturing innovation we have to get back to operating in. I think previously in America, the only period of time you could look at where we were really humming on all cylinders was probably the war economies. So we were cranking out bombers and tanks and stuff to support the war effort. I'm not big on war, so I would like to do the same sort of innovation renaissance without the impetus to blow up another country. I would like to just do it for the sake of the U.S. economy, for the sake of our kids, for their fulfillment, for their jobs, their careers, all of that. That would be a much better motivation to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and post World War II, I've said it a lot on this show. My audience is very used to hearing this. Post World War II, we saw the biggest surge in manufacturing leading up to the 1950s that our country has ever seen. And at the same time, we had the most robust middle class that the world has ever seen. And then in the 70s, we started making bad policy choices. We let the gold standard expire, which created a lot of issues. We, switched from pensions to 401ks, which took away a lot of long-term stability and loyalty from employees. We took trade schools out of our high schools, or trade programs out of our high schools. And we told an entire generation and a half that there was no future in factories and that they needed to go to university. And so we have an entire generation and a half that can manage people because they got MBAs, or they can heal people because they became doctors, or they can litigate because they became lawyers. But we don't have a whole lot of people who can create things and know the sense of pride that comes from crafting something and then going home and having that middle class lifestyle. The wealth inequalities in this world, or in this country, are stark. And that's the one thing that both sides of the political aisle seem to agree on, is that the wealth inequity in this country is not where it should be. That wealth distribution should, when polled, both sides said it should look a certain way, and it's not the way that it looks now. And so I think you're right. It's going to be messy. It's going to potentially be painful. But I do think that manufacturing, which did it once, can do it again and rebuild the middle class. And that is my hope for that renaissance that you speak of. So I love, when guests are thinking similarly. Andrew, last question as we wrap up here. I can't believe it's already been an hour. That was a really quick hour. What haven't I asked you that you want to share with the audience?
Man, I don't know. I guess I'd just like to end on a hopeful note. We made this mess, like you said. We got ourselves into it. I'm confident we can get ourselves out of it. As a country, we have the most unique founding and the most unique system that has never been duplicated. Those roots of freedom and liberty and pursuit of happiness are going to be driving, motivating factors for us to rebuild all of this. When I say it's going to be messy, life is messy, and
absolutely,
everybody just has to just deal with that reality. And but we're going to get there. The other thing we have going for us is we just have the best piece of dirt. I just love this country. It's big, it's huge, it's got everything it needs. It's very self-sufficient. So if we can just get over ourselves and get back to work, I think we're going to be just fine. And
yeah.
I'm really optimistic and not that worried about it. And I have a ton of friends overseas. They're all cheering us on. They want to see us succeed. They want to take part in that. They want to collaborate. They want to partner with us, and they want to partner with our economy because it lifts them up. And so it's a global initiative if you really think about it. And I'm confident that it's going to happen. So everybody, have a great holiday, and you just got to get back to work. 2026.
But Andrew, thank you so much for showing up so authentically and honestly, and for grounding this conversation in your lived experiences. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope everybody got something out of this. And I'm looking forward to being a very small part of the American economic revolution in manufacturing.
I love it. So thank you, audience members, for being here today. For everybody listening, I hope this episode gives you something to reflect on. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing Andrew's story. Again, leave a comment in whatever platform you're listening to this on. Talk about your experience on compact track loaders. This has been the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. Thanks for spending time with us. Have a great rest of your day.